I have shocking news for you. The ABC, which campaigns so hard on race issues, see racists everywhere, is itself racist. Our national broadcaster is shockingly racist, if their own journalists and presenters are to be believed. I've never heard so many staff complaints at other organisations. Or is the ABC being gamed? This is a case of the revolution eating its own. Now, it is now being sued by Antoinette Lattouf. She's a Lebanese Australian, hyphenated, who was dumped as a fill-in radio host over Christmas for being actually an anti-Israel activist. Although she blames racism for the decision, saying it is disheartening to not only witness the horrendous treatment of people of colour by the ABC over the years, but to now personally and so publicly feel its wrath. Now, she's not the only one complaining, you see. In fact, there have been so many complaints from staff about ABC racism, the ABC in 2022 publicly apologised for all this racism in its newsrooms. It's been accused of racism by ABC presenter Dan Bouchier, for instance. He identifies as Aboriginal. Presenter Stan Grant, he quit after accusing the ABC of institutional failure by not correcting the lies written about him by racists. Asian Australian reporter Jason Om, he said he'd been disappointed for years by the ABC's treatment. And the Sydney Morning Herald reported an Aboriginal staffer complaining for many Indigenous journalists that racism, bias and prejudice we've faced inside the ABC has been far more damaging than any abuse we've received online. Wow. Joining me is the panel, James McPherson and Liz Storer, both of the Late Debate here on Sky News at 10 p.m. You must watch it. James, now even the ABC, the national broadcaster, is it rotten with racism? Is that a sort of metaphor for the whole country? Has even apologised for it? Or is there something else going on?
Maybe they are racist, Andrew. I'm trying to think, when was the last time the ABC sacked a white heterosexual male with conservative leanings? They've never done that. Then again, they've never hired a white heterosexual male with conservative leanings. This situation is entirely predictable. The ABC have sown the wind, now they're reaping the whirlwind. They collected a group of people as much for their diversity as for their ability. So they've got a group of staff who see themselves at the top of the social justice pyramid, and you can't correct such people, you can't discipline such people because they see all of life through the prism of victimhood and entitlement. And so the moment you try to correct them, well, it's not their behaviour that's the problem. No, there must be something bigoted about you. And so when you employ people for their anti-racism, because they're anti-racists, it's all well and good until there's a disagreement, and next thing you know, they're accusing you of being racist.
But I think there's something else going on here on top of that. I should say the ABC is yet to file a response to these claims, but I've got some sympathy with other claims that have said the ABC is racist because I feel like I'm the token ethnic or whatever that they've picked, you know. And I wonder whether, in fact, it is racist in that way.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I can't even imagine the shock. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when the ABC realised they actually had someone who was pro-Israel on their payroll. They couldn't fire this woman quick enough. But I do find this so hard to believe, Andrew, given it was just 6 months ago that the taxpayer forked out for the ABC's 30-page diversity, inclusion and belonging report. This was this massive plan to be rolled out over 3 years, complete with cultural guidance advisors yet to be appointed. Again, heaven knows how much that will set back the taxpayer. But the good news is Aussies do seem to be wisening up to the state propaganda arm that the ABC is. When you look at their radio share just over the last 3 years, in Melbourne, it's plummeted by 40%. Melbourne, you would think that's the epicenter of leftyism in the country, and plummeted by 30%, 35%, I should say, in Sydney. Those are Australia's two most major cities. What does that tell you? People are voting with their feet. They've had enough of this rubbish.
So right, you know. I think that is. But, you know, I wonder, James, whether this is in fact a case of the revolution eating its own. Yeah, a lot of us have been so falsely accused. You know, we're on the right, so by By definition, we're supposedly racist, and we've been falsely accused of racism for so many years, we no longer pay any attention because we know it's rubbish. And so now the only people that you can galvanise and shock by calling them racist are people on the left, like the ABC, and it's now turned into a weapon to beat it round the head. I think it's very funny.
Yeah, the revolution always eats its own. The woke snake always ends up devouring its own tail, and that's exactly what we're seeing at the ABC. It's hilarious to watch. The only problem is we're paying for it.
That's true. But Liz, want to go back to this Woolworths thing, right? It's the government, Murray Watts, who thought he had a clever line, Peter Dutton is focused on what sort of thong you can buy on Australia Day. But playing down the outrage of many Australians, who I would assume too would include a lot of Labor voters, about Woolworths saying you can't celebrate Australia Day by buying any product from us. Aldi now says it won't stock Australia Day merchandise as well. But, you kind of say, well, that's a German company. What do you expect? Woolworths is Australian owned.
But is it? If you look at the two major shareholders of Woolworths, Andrew, they are BlackRock and Vanguard. Yes, those two very well-known, massive entities that basically control every company under the sun. If you can name one that they don't own, haven't got four paws in each pie, then I'll hold my breath, but I'll probably die. These guys are extremely powerful, and we know who's pulling the strings here. The anti-West, the self-loathing that is being rolled out across the West. Western countries, we see this all the time. We saw how Woolworths, that so passionately backed the yes vote last year, got whacked over the head for that too. Again, people need to vote with their feet. I was so heartened by Peter Dutton. Surely, I certainly can't remember, I don't know about you, but a politician that senior in our country calling for a boycott today of something as major as a huge supermarket chain in our nation. I cannot remember that ever happening before. This is significant. And what people need to realise now more than ever is we are the resistance. There's almost 26 million of us in this country. The lefties aren't the minority. They are the minority, rather. And the silent majority can stay silent but take their money elsewhere. Go to farmers markets. We're always talking about how ripped off the farmers are in this country by this duopoly of Coles and Woolworths. We, the consumer, have the power with our dollars, and we can tell these global elites pulling the strings, yes, even at Woolworths, where they can shove their agenda.
You are so right to pull me up on how significant this is. Because, James, I remember Scott Morrison telling me the one time he deigned to talk to me when he was Prime Minister, because I think that I was too right-wing, conservative, I mean, what a joke, that he wasn't going to engage in the culture wars. I think he said wouldn't put on an extra job, or he laughed it off. Wouldn't go, and the culture wars in the end destroyed him. But here's Peter Dutton getting stuck right in. Mistake or good?
Absolutely good. He'll ride all the way to the lodge on issues like this. I mean, can you believe Murray Watt? Murray Watt says the Labor Party, we're focused on fighting inflation. No, you're not. The RBA have been fighting inflation. The Labor Party have been fueling inflation. And then he accuses Peter Dutton of wasting time fighting the culture wars. Aren't the left hypocritical? They're the ones who dismantle the culture, and anyone who objects, they're the ones who are accused of fighting the culture wars.
Yes.
It's as plain as day. No one buys it. It's absolute rubbish. Peter Dutton is right to take a stand on this. Morrison disappointed his supporters because he refused to fight the culture wars. Like Liz said, there's 26 million of us who are dying for somebody to stand up for our country and fight the culture wars. Dutton will absolutely win on this one. Woolworths will lose, so will Aldi. Coles have come out and said, we will stock Australian items for Australia Day. Well, their marketing department just got an absolute free kick, didn't they?
Absolutely. Liz Storey, James McPherson, thank you both for your time.